The elevator lurched once, groaned, and dropped into perfect darkness with the kind of silence that makes your ears ring. Juliet Kensington pressed her back against the cold metal wall, thermos clutched against her chest like a shield, and tried very hard to remember how to breathe. The emergency lights hadn't kicked in. The panel was dead. They were somewhere between floors, suspended in a shaft 40 stories above the ground, and the man who'd stepped in beside her 3 seconds before the cable gave was laughing. Actually laughing. "Well," he said, voice rich with amusement that seemed to fill the small space, "this is unexpected." Juliet's teeth were already starting to chatter. The heating had cut with the power, and the metal box was leaching warmth faster than her cardigan could replace it. She wrapped her free arm around herself and tried to sound calm. "Your definition of unexpected is concerning." "Fair point." She heard fabric rustle, movement in the dark. "Are you hurt?" "No, just cold." The words came out shaky, betraying her. The thermos was still hot against her ribs, but her fingers were going numb. "How long do you think before someone notices?" "Could be a while. It's not quite 5 in the morning." A pause. "You're shaking." "It's freezing." "It is." More rustling, and then something heavy and warm settled over her shoulders, enveloping her in fabric that smelled like cedar and something darker, older. A coat. His coat. "Better?" Juliet pulled it tighter instinctively, too cold to be polite. "You don't need this?" "I run warm." There was a smile in his voice. "Keep it." Her eyes were adjusting, barely. She could make out his silhouette now, tall and oddly still, leaning against the opposite wall with his arms crossed. White hair caught what little light filtered through the crack in the doors above. He'd been wearing all black beneath the coat. Expensive black, the kind that said money without shouting it. "I'm Juliet," she offered, because they might be here a while and silence felt worse than small talk. "Nikolai." He tilted his head. "You work nights?" "Night auditor, graveyard shift at the Meridian." "You?" "Penthouse tenant. Was tenant. Lease is up today, actually." He sounded amused again. "Excellent timing on my part. The penthouse is floor 62. It is. This is a service elevator." Also true. She could hear the grin. "The main elevator's been out since midnight. Maintenance promised it would be fixed by morning. I got impatient." Juliet laughed despite herself, a sharp exhale that fogged in the cold air. "So you broke into the service elevator." "I prefer creatively accessed. And now we're stuck." "Poetic justice," Nikolai agreed cheerfully, "though I maintain the universe is overreacting." The shaking was getting worse. Juliet set the thermos down and pulled his coat tighter, but her whole body was trembling now, adrenaline and cold combining into something that made her muscles ache. She slid down the wall until she was sitting, knees pulled to her chest. "Hey." His voice changed, humor dropping away. "Juliet, talk to me. Are you injured? Did you hit something when we dropped?" "No, I'm just..." Her breath hitched. "I don't do well with cold, or heights, or small spaces, apparently." Silence, heavy and assessing. Then he moved, crossing the small space to crouch in front of her. This close, she could see his face properly for the first time. Pale skin, almost luminous in the dark. Sharp features that looked carved rather than born. Eyes that caught the faint light and reflected it back like a cat's. Beautiful, in a way that made her chest tight. "Breathe with me," he said quietly. "In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. Can you do that?" She nodded and tried. His voice counted her through it, steady and patient, until the panic receded enough that she could think again. "Better?" "Yeah, thank you." She managed a weak smile. "Sorry, not my most impressive moment." "You're doing fine." He settled beside her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him. He hadn't been lying about running warm. "Tell me about the graveyard shift. Do you like it?" "Trying to distract me?" "Absolutely." Juliet huffed a laugh. "It's quiet. I like quiet. Most of the time it's just me, the lobby, and whatever I'm reading. The occasional drunk guest trying to figure out their room number." She flexed her fingers, trying to keep circulation going. "What about you? What does a penthouse tenant do?" "Currently, Sit in broken elevators. Before that. Meetings mostly, contracts, negotiations, incredibly boring stuff that sounds impressive at parties. Try me. He was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke again, there was something careful in his tone. Import-export. Luxury goods. Antiquities mostly. I broker deals between collectors and estates. So you're a middleman for rich people buying old things. That's remarkably accurate, actually. Do you enjoy it? Another pause. I used to. Lately, it's been more obligation than pleasure. Too much politics, not enough actual work. He shifted slightly. What are you reading this week? How do you know I'm reading something? You said, whatever I'm reading, present continuous. That suggests an active book. Juliet felt herself smile despite the cold. Detective novel, golden age stuff, all country houses and clever twists. Who's the murderer? If I knew that, I wouldn't still be reading it. Fair. His shoulder brushed hers. Do you like mysteries because they're solvable? Everything has an answer, all the threads tie up? The question was more perceptive than she'd expected. Maybe. I like that someone's paying attention, that the small details matter. They always matter, Nikolai said softly. People just don't always notice. They fell into silence again, but it was easier now, companionable. Juliet's shaking had calmed somewhat, though she was still freezing. The coat helped. So did his proximity, though she wasn't about to admit that out loud. Can I ask you something? She said eventually. Of course. Why aren't you cold? I'm wearing your coat and I'm still freezing. You're in a thin shirt and you're fine. He went very still. I told you, I run warm. Nobody runs that warm. Medical condition, he said lightly. Unusual metabolism, very boring, very genetic. Please don't ask me to explain the science, because I'll get it wrong. It was a deflection, smooth and practiced. Juliet let it go because they were trapped in an elevator and pushing didn't seem wise, but she filed it away. Strange details, they mattered. How long do you think we've been here? She asked instead. 20 minutes maybe. Feels longer. It always does. He pulled out a phone. Of course he had a phone. Why hadn't she thought of that? And the screen lit his face in cold blue light. Juliet watched his expression shift from neutral to confused to something harder. What? No signal. Which is odd because this building has cell repeaters on every 10th floor. He turned the phone, showing her. 0 bars. And the emergency call button isn't responding. Maybe the power outage knocked everything out? Maybe. He didn't sound convinced. Do you have your phone? Juliet patted her pockets and came up empty. Left it in my locker. I was just running up to grab supplies from storage. Wasn't supposed to be gone more than 5 minutes. Nikolai stood abruptly, moving to the control panel. She heard him prying something open, then a muttered curse. The emergency release is manual. We could open the doors. And go where? We're between floors. There might be enough gap to climb through. If we're close to the next floor, in the dark, 40 stories up, I have a flashlight app. Nikolai. She made her voice firm. That's a terrible idea. He turned, and even in the shadows she could see the tension in his shoulders. So we just wait? We wait. Someone will notice eventually. The building has security. They do rounds. Not of the elevator shafts. Then my supervisor will notice I'm gone. Or maintenance will run diagnostics. Or the sun will come up, he said quietly. Juliet frowned. What does that have to do with anything? Nothing. You're right. We'll wait. He came back to the wall, but he didn't sit. Instead, he paced. 3 steps one way, 3 steps back, restless energy filling the small space. Are you claustrophobic? She asked. Something like that. Sitting helps. Gives your brain less to process. I'm fine. You're pacing like a caged animal. He stopped mid-step and laughed, sharp and startled. That's accurate. But he sat anyway, folding himself back down beside her. Better? You tell me. I've been worse. He tilted his head back against the wall. Ask me something else. Keep talking. What do you want me to ask? Anything. Surprise me. Juliet thought about it, pulling the coat tighter. Why are you leaving the penthouse? You said your lease is up, but it sounded like a choice. It was. Time to move on. I've been here 5 years. That's long enough. Most people don't leave apartments they like on a schedule. I'm not most people. I'm noticing. She studied his profile. Do you move around a lot? Constantly. It's part of the work. Can't broker estate sales if you're not willing to travel. He paused. Also, I get bored easily. 5 years in one place is pushing it. Where will you go next? Haven't decided. Somewhere old, probably. Europe, maybe, or the Middle East. Lots of history there, lots of collectors. Sounds lonely. It can be. He said it simply, no self-pity, just fact. But it's what I know! Juliet wanted to ask more, but a sharp metallic groan cut through the elevator, and the floor dropped 6 inches before catching again. She bit back a yelp, heart slamming against her ribs. Nikolai's arm was around her shoulders before she could blink, solid and steady. I've got you. We're okay. That didn't sound okay. The emergency brake is holding. We're not falling. His voice was calm, absolutely certain. Breathe, Juliet. She breathed, focused on the warmth of his arm, the steady rise and fall of his chest against her shoulder. Slowly, the panic receded again. Sorry, she whispered. Don't apologize. This is objectively terrible. His thumb traced small circles on her shoulder, absent and soothing. You're handling it better than most would. You're very calm for someone who's trapped. I've been in worse situations. Like what? Long story. Involves a basement in Prague, a disputed Vermeer, and 3 separate crime families. He said it lightly, but Juliet had the feeling he wasn't entirely joking. This is practically pleasant by comparison. Nobody's shooting at us. That's a low bar. I've learned to appreciate low bars. The cold was getting worse. Juliet could see her breath now, and her hands were numb despite being tucked under the coat. She tried to tuck them under her arms, but the shaking was back, harder this time. Nikolai noticed immediately. Come here. What? You're freezing. I'm warm. Basic thermodynamics. He shifted, opening his arms. I promise I'm not trying anything, but you're going into hypothermia, and I'm not watching that happen. Juliet hesitated for exactly 3 seconds before her brain overruled her pride. She leaned into him, and he wrapped both arms around her, pulling her against his chest. The heat was immediate and shocking, like pressing against a furnace. Oh my God, she breathed. I told you. I run warm. This is insane. Are you sure you're not sick? You feel like you have a fever. Just biology. Lucky biology, under the circumstances. His voice rumbled against her ear. Better? So much better. She was still shaking, but the violent edge was fading. Thank you. Don't mention it. They sat like that, wrapped together in the dark, and Juliet felt her breathing slow. This close, she could hear his heartbeat. It was slow, much slower than hers, steady as a drum. Everything about him was strange. The impossible warmth, the too slow pulse, the way he moved in the dark like he could see perfectly. Nikolai? What are you? She felt him go still, every muscle tensing. What do you mean? You know what I mean. She pulled back enough to look at his face. You're not human, or if you are, you're something else too. He stared at her for a long moment, eyes catching the light like mirrors. Then, slowly, he smiled. It wasn't a comforting expression. His teeth were too sharp, the canines too long, and Juliet's hindbrain screamed danger, even as her conscious mind stayed oddly calm. You're very perceptive, he said quietly. Are you going to hurt me? No. Simple, absolute, never. Then what are you? Nikolai was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was careful. If I tell you, you'll be afraid, and I don't want that. I'm already afraid. We're trapped in an elevator 40 floors up. The cable is damaged. We might die here. She met his eyes. Whatever you are, it's the least scary thing happening right now. He laughed, surprised and genuine. That's a fair point. Another pause, weighing. Then, softly, I'm a vampire, Juliet, about 900 years old, give or take a decade, currently serving as the reigning king of the North American territories, though I'm trying very hard to retire, hence the moving. Juliet processed that. Vampire king. Technically, yes. Practically, it's more like CEO of a very old, very complicated corporation. And you drink blood. I do. Are you hungry now? No, I fed 2 days ago. I'm good for another week, easily. He searched her face. You're not screaming. Should I be? Most people do. Most people don't read as much Gothic fiction as I do. Juliet settled back against his chest, thinking, does the sun actually kill you? Not kill, but it burns badly. A few minutes will leave scars, an hour will put me in a coma. Much longer than that, and yes, I'll die. Her blood went cold. Nikolai, what time is it? He checked his phone. 5:15. What time is sunrise? Silence. Nikolai, what time is sunrise? 6:43, he said quietly. Juliet pulled back, staring at him. We're in a glass elevator shaft. I saw it from the lobby. The whole atrium is windowed. When the sun comes up, I know. Then why are you so calm? Because panicking won't help, and because... He stopped. Because what? Because the emergency release opens onto the sky lobby, 41st floor, all glass, east facing. If we open it, you can climb out. Call for help from there. What about you? I'll stay here. The elevator itself is metal, no windows. As long as I stay inside, you'll be trapped here all day, in a broken elevator, alone. I've had worse days. Juliet shook her head. That's not no. We'll wait for rescue together. Juliet, if rescue doesn't come before dawn, then we'll figure something out. There's nothing to figure out. The math is simple. You can't stay here until nightfall, you'll freeze. I can't go into sunlight. So you leave, and I wait. Absolutely not. This isn't a negotiation. You're right, it's not. Because I'm not leaving you here to burn. She grabbed his shirt, surprising herself with the force. We have over an hour. We'll get out together, or we'll wait together. But I am not abandoning you in a death trap. Nikolai stared at her like she'd grown a second head. You've known me for less than an hour. And you gave me your coat 5 minutes after meeting me. What's your point? My point is that your life is worth more than what? A vampire king? Says who? Says 9 centuries of evidence. But his voice had gone soft, wondering. You really won't leave. Not without you. He reached up, cupping her face in one hand. His palm was warm against her frozen cheek. You're extraordinary. You know that? I'm stubborn. There's a difference. No, he said. There really isn't. Then he kissed her. It was soft, careful, asking permission, even as it took it. Juliet froze for half a heartbeat, then kissed him back, leaning into the warmth and the darkness and the sheer insanity of it all. His lips were warm, his hands gentle on her face, and when he pulled back, she was breathing hard. Sorry, he whispered. I shouldn't have... Don't apologize. She kissed him again, harder this time. Don't you dare apologize. He made a sound low in his throat and pulled her closer, and for a few perfect moments, the cold and the fear and the broken elevator all disappeared. There was just this. His mouth on hers, his hands in her hair. The feeling of something clicking into place that she hadn't known was missing. When they finally broke apart, Nikolai pressed his forehead to hers. I'm trying to figure out how I got this lucky in a life or death scenario. Same, Juliet laughed breathlessly. This is insane. Completely. I don't even know you. Yes, you do. He pulled back enough to meet her eyes. Maybe not the details, but you know me. I can feel it. And the strange thing was, she could too. Like something old and certain had woken up the moment he'd laughed in the darkness, and now it was purring contentedly in her chest, saying yes, this one, finally. Okay, she said. Okay, but we're still getting out of here together. Nikolai's expression shifted, going serious. Then we need a plan, because in 75 minutes, that shaft is going to light up like a tanning bed, and I can't be anywhere near it. Juliet forced herself to think. The emergency release, can you open it from here? Yes, it's a manual crank built into the panel. And the sky lobby, it's all glass? East-facing windows, yes. But there are hallways, interior spaces, conference rooms, I think. Do you know the layout? I've been to events there, years ago. He closed his eyes, remembering. 3 main rooms, all windowed, but the hallways are interior, and there's a service corridor that runs behind the main space. No windows. Can we get to it from the elevator shaft? If we can climb up to the doors, yes. It's maybe a 6-foot gap. I can boost you through, then pull myself up. And then? Then we get to the service corridor before sunrise. Barricade ourselves in. Wait for the building to open and call for help from a landline. Juliet nodded slowly. That could work. There's one problem. What? I can open the doors and boost you through, but once you're up, I need you to brace yourself and help pull me. I'm strong, but the angle is bad and the climb is straight vertical. He met her eyes. Can you do that? I'm not light. How much do you weigh? About 190. Juliet looked at her own arms, slim and definitely not bodybuilder grade. I'm not sure I can hold that. You don't have to hold it. Just brace and pull. I'll do most of the work. His voice was calm, certain. I trust you. You barely know me. Yes, I do. He echoed her own words back, smiling. Maybe not the details. Despite everything, Juliet smiled back. Okay, let's do this. Nikolai stood, pulling her up with him. The coat started to slide off her shoulders, but he caught it, wrapping it tighter. Keep it. You'll need it more than me. You'll freeze. I'll be fine. Vampires don't feel cold the same way. He moved to the panel, prying it open with his bare hands. Metal screamed and Juliet winced. That's not normal human strength either, is it? Not remotely. He found the crank and started turning. The doors shuddered, then began to open with a grinding shriek. Cold air poured in, and Juliet could see the elevator shaft above them, a dark vertical tunnel disappearing into blackness. Far above, a faint square of lighter gray marked the sky lobby entrance. Nikolai leaned out, assessing. We're about 6 feet below the threshold. I'll brace on the door frame and make a stirrup with my hands. You step up, grab the edge and pull yourself through. Then lie flat and reach back for me, okay? Okay. He positioned himself, hands locked together. Step up. I've got you. Juliet put her foot in his hands and he lifted, smooth and effortless, until she was level with the opening. She grabbed the edge-cold metal, sharp enough to hurt, and pulled. For one horrible moment, her arms screamed and her grip started to slip, but then Nikolai's hand was on her back, boosting, and she was through, sprawling onto the lobby floor. She rolled over, gasping. The sky lobby was enormous, all glass and polished floors, and the eastern windows were already starting to lighten. Dawn wasn't far. Juliet! Nikolai's voice echoed from below. Lie flat and brace your feet against something. I'm coming up. She scrambled to the edge, lying on her stomach. Below, Nikolai had already jumped, catching the lip of the opening with both hands. He hung there for a moment, then started pulling himself up, muscles straining. Juliet reached down, grabbing his forearms. I've got you! Brace! She hooked her feet against a support pillar and pulled. Nikolai heaved, and for a second she thought they were going to fail, thought he was going to fall, but then he was up, rolling onto the floor beside her. They lay there, both breathing hard. That, Juliet said, was terrible. Agreed! Nikolai sat up, scanning the lobby. We need to move. Where's the service corridor? Juliet looked around. The lobby was a study in modern luxury, all clean lines and expensive art. But behind the reception desk, she spotted a plain door marked Staff Only. There. They ran. Nikolai hit the door first, trying the handle. Locked. Of course it is, Juliet muttered. Nikolai grabbed the handle and twisted. Metal shrieked, the lock shattered, and the door swung open. Remind me not to arm wrestle you, Juliet said. Noted. The corridor beyond was narrow, windowless, lit by emergency lights. Nikolai pulled her inside and shut the door behind them, leaning against it. "What time?" Juliet asked. He checked his phone. 6:20. "We've got 23 minutes. Is this enough? Will the door block the sunlight? As long as we stay away from the main lobby, yes." He looked down the corridor. There should be a break room or office somewhere. Interior room, no windows. They found it 3 doors down, a small staff lounge with a kitchenette, lockers, and a beat-up sofa. No windows. Nikolai stepped inside and visibly relaxed. This will work. Juliet followed, closing the door. Now what? Now we wait for the building to open. Security should be here by 7:30. We can call from the landline. He gestured to an old desk phone in the corner. Juliet picked up the receiver. Dead. No dial tone. Nikolai frowned. That's not right. Landlines have separate power. Unless someone cut them. They stared at each other. "The power outage wasn't an accident," Juliet said slowly. "Was it? I'm starting to think not." Nikolai's expression had gone cold, dangerous. Someone trapped us in that elevator. Someone who knew what I am and what sunrise would do. Who would want you dead? Short list or long list? You're joking. I'm really not. I've been king for 200 years. You don't hold that position without making enemies. He started pacing again, thinking. But most of them wouldn't sabotage a building. Too much collateral damage, too much attention. This is personal. Someone who knows my habits, my schedule. Someone in your own court? Maybe. His jaw tightened. Probably. Juliet felt cold despite the coat. If they cut the power and the phones, what else did they do? Good question. Nikolai tried the door. It opened. He checked the corridor, then came back. We're not locked in, at least, but if they're smart. A soft click echoed from somewhere down the hall. Nikolai went perfectly still. That was a timer. For what? I don't know, but we need to. The emergency lights cut out. Darkness, total and complete. Then, slowly, the faintest gray light began filtering under the door. "No," Nikolai whispered. "No, that's not possible." Juliet's eyes adjusted, and she saw it. Light seeping in from the corridor. Which meant light was getting into the corridor. Which meant, "The lobby shutters are opening," Nikolai said, voice tight. "They're on a timer. Someone overrode the system. Can you stop it?" "The controls are in the main lobby." He looked at the door, at the growing light beyond, which is now full of sunrise. Juliet's mind raced. "The door's solid. Can the light get in here?" "Not if we seal the gaps." He was already moving, grabbing his jacket from her shoulders. "Help me." They stuffed the jacket along the bottom of the door, blocking the thin line of light. Nikolai grabbed towels from a locker, jamming them into the frame. The room plunged back into darkness. "Will that hold?" Juliet asked. "For now. But if the shutters are fully open." He stopped. "Do you smell that?" Juliet sniffed. Smoke. Faint but growing. "Something's burning," she said. Nikolai moved to the opposite wall, pressing his hand against it. "It's warm. There's fire on the other side." "They set the building on fire?" "Just this floor, probably. Enough to force us out. Into the lobby. Into the sun." His voice was calm, but Juliet could hear the rage underneath. "Whoever did this is thorough. We need to get out of here. I can't go into the corridor. It's full of reflected sunlight. Then I'll go. I'll find another way out, find help." "No." He grabbed her arm. "If there's fire, the stairs might be blocked. You could get trapped. So could we if we stay here." "Juliet." "I'm not watching you burn." She pulled free, heading for the door. "I'll be fast. I'll find a phone, call 911 and come back. 5 minutes. It's too dangerous. It's more dangerous to stay here and wait to be cooked." She grabbed the doorknob, then stopped, looked back at him, standing in the darkness. "Trust me, the way I trusted you in the elevator." Nikolai stared at her for a long, agonized moment. Then he nodded once, sharp. 5 minutes. If you're not back, I'm coming after you, sun or no sun. Deal. Juliet yanked the jacket from the door and threw it over her head like a hood, then opened the door and ran. The corridor was full of smoke and terrible gray light. She kept her eyes down, following the wall, coughing into her sleeve. The fire was close. She could hear it crackling somewhere ahead. She passed the first door locked, second door locked, third. It opened. A maintenance closet full of cleaning supplies and tools, and on the wall, a red emergency phone. Juliet grabbed it, nearly sobbing with relief. Dial tone. She punched 911. 911, what's your emergency? Fire at the Meridian Tower, 41st floor, sky lobby. We're trapped. There's smoke and, Madam, we already have units en route. There's a full evacuation in progress. Are you inside the building? Yes. 41st floor. Service corridor behind the sky lobby. Can you evacuate? No. She stopped. Saying my vampire boyfriend will burn wouldn't help. My friend is injured. He can't move. We need rescue here. Understood. Stay on the line. I'm coordinating with the fire team now. Juliet pressed the phone to her ear, listening to the operator relay information. In the background, she heard sirens. Help was coming. She just had to get back to Nikolai. She hung up and ran back the way she'd come, jacket still over her head. The smoke was thicker now, burning her lungs. The light was brighter too, the lobby shutters fully open, dawn pouring in. She reached the break room and threw herself inside, slamming the door. Nikolai caught her before she could fall, pulling her upright. Did you? Called 911. Fire department's coming. She coughed, gasping. Evacuating the building. They know we're here. Relief flooded his face. How long? I don't know. Soon. Good. That's good. He guided her to the sofa, sitting her down. You did perfectly. The fire's getting closer. I know, but we're okay. Help is coming. We just have to. A massive crack split the air and part of the ceiling collapsed. Juliet screamed as Nikolai threw himself over her, shielding her from falling debris. Smoke poured in through the new hole, thick and choking. Above, she could see flames licking the edges. We need to move! Nikolai hauled her up. Where? The corridor's full of sunlight. Then we go through it. Fast! He grabbed the jacket, wrapping it around his head and shoulders. Stay close to me. Run straight for the stairwell. Don't stop. Nikolai, you'll burn. I'll heal. You won't. Now move! He threw open the door and ran. Juliet followed, staying on his heels. The corridor was a nightmare of smoke and light. She saw Nikolai stumble as the sun hit him, saw his jacket start to smoke, but he kept running, pulling her with him. The stairwell door loomed ahead, locked. Nikolai didn't slow. He hit it shoulder first, and the door exploded off its hinges. They tumbled into the stairwell, dark and blessedly cool. Nikolai collapsed against the wall, gasping. Juliet knelt beside him. Let me see. I'm fine. You're smoking. Let me see. Reluctantly, he pulled off the jacket. His hands were burned, the skin red and blistering. His face was flushed, but not burned. The jacket had protected it. It's not as bad as it could be, he said. I'll heal. How fast? Couple of hours if I feed. Couple of days if I don't. Juliet heard footsteps below, voices shouting. Fire department. They're coming. Thank God. Nikolai leaned his head back, eyes closed. This has been the worst morning of my very long life. Despite everything, Juliet laughed. Really? Worse than Prague? Prague didn't have sunrise, or fire, or... He opened his eyes, looking at her. Or you almost dying. So yes, worse. I didn't almost die. You ran into a burning building. So did you. I'm already dead, technically. Doesn't count. Juliet took his burned hand, carefully, gently. You're not dead. You're right here. He looked at their joined hands, something complicated crossing his face. Juliet. Sir? Madam? A firefighter appeared on the stairs below, dressed in full gear. We need to get you out. Can you walk? Yes, Juliet said. We're okay. The firefighter led them down, floor by floor, until they emerged into the lobby. Dawn was breaking properly now, the sky going pink and gold. Nikolai stayed in the shadows, jacket back over his head, but Juliet could see him relaxing as they moved into the covered areas. Outside, fire trucks and ambulances filled the street. Paramedics descended on them immediately, checking for injuries. "I'm fine," Juliet insisted. "Just some smoke inhalation. He's worse." She pointed to Nikolai. The paramedic looked at his hands and winced. "Sir, we need to treat those burns." "I have a condition," Nikolai said smoothly. "Severe photosensitivity. I need to stay out of direct sunlight, and I have a specialist who handles my care. If you can just bandage them for now." The paramedic frowned but nodded, wrapping his hands in gauze. "You should still see a doctor." "I will. Thank you." As the paramedic moved away, a police officer approached. "We need to ask you some questions about the fire. Do you know how it started?" Juliet and Nikolai exchanged glances. "No," Nikolai said carefully. "We were trapped in an elevator during the power outage. Made it to the sky lobby just as the fire started." "Trapped how long?" "About an hour." The officer made notes. "We're treating this as suspicious. The power outage, the fire, the timing, it's too coordinated. Do either of you have any reason to believe this was targeted?" Nikolai hesitated, and Juliet saw him calculating. Finally, "I'd like to speak with the detective in charge if possible. There's some context that might be relevant." The officer's eyebrows rose. "What kind of context?" "The kind that's easier to explain once." "Is there somewhere private we can talk?" They were taken to a mobile command center, where a tired-looking detective listened as Nikolai explained part of it. He talked about being a high-profile antiquities dealer, about recent business disputes, about threats he'd received. He didn't mention being a vampire king, but he mentioned enough that the detective started looking concerned. "You think this was an assassination attempt?" "I think someone wanted me in that building at that time, during a power outage, with no way out before sunrise. Whether they expected the elevator to fail or just trap me in my penthouse, I don't know. But yes, someone tried to kill me." "And you think it's related to your work?" "I think it's related to my retirement. There are people who don't want me to leave." He glanced at Juliet. "People who benefit from my current position." The detective made more notes. "We'll need a list of names, anyone with motive, access, or means. I'll have my lawyer send it over." They were released an hour later, once the paramedics had cleared them both. Nikolai's hands were wrapped in bandages, and Juliet smelled like smoke, but they were alive. They stood on the sidewalk, watching the fire department pack up. The sun was fully up now, bright and merciless. Nikolai stayed under the building's awning, in the shade. "So," Juliet said, "that happened. That happened." He looked down at her. "You saved my life, multiple times. You saved mine too. We're even. We're not remotely even." He reached out with his bandaged hand, touching her cheek. "You could have left. Should have left. Any rational person would have. Good thing I'm irrational." He smiled, soft and genuine. "Good thing." They stood there, close and quiet, until Juliet's phone buzzed. She'd retrieved it from her locker on the way out, and now it was lighting up with missed calls. Her supervisor, her roommate, 6 texts asking where she was. "I need to call in," she said reluctantly. "Explain why I missed the end of my shift. I need to make some calls too." Nikolai's expression went hard. "Find out who did this. Will you be okay? Your hands. We'll heal. I'll feed tonight. Speed it up." He caught her worried look. "From a volunteer. I have a network. It's all consensual, all safe." "Okay, good." She chewed her lip. "Can I see you again, after you've handled everything?" "Juliet, you can see me whenever you want, for as long as you want." He leaned down, kissing her forehead. "I'll call you, once I've dealt with this mess." "Promise?" "I promise." She gave him her number, and he typed it into his phone with careful, bandaged fingers. Then she watched him walk away, staying in the shadows, until he turned a corner and disappeared. Juliet stood there for a moment, processing. Then she called her supervisor and started explaining about elevators and fires and the strangest night of her life. 3 days later, Juliet got the call. It's done, Nikolai said without preamble. Can I see you? Yes, where? Are you afraid of heights? After the elevator? Terrified. Why? Because my new apartment has an excellent view and I'd like to show it to you, if you're willing. She smiled. Send me the address. 20 minutes later, she was standing in front of a sleek building in the financial district, looking up at what had to be 40 stories of glass and steel. Nikolai met her in the lobby, hands still bandaged but healing, and led her to a private elevator. I promise this one works, he said. It better. They rode up in silence, and when the doors opened, Juliet stepped into the most beautiful apartment she'd ever seen. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, all the glass treated with a faint bronze tint. Modern furniture in dark wood and leather. Art on the walls that probably cost more than her annual salary. You said you were moving, she said. I thought you meant leaving the city. I was, but then I met someone who gave me a reason to stay. He led her to the windows. The glass is UV filtered. I can stand here in full daylight and be fine. It's like living in twilight. It's beautiful. I'm glad you like it. He turned to face her. I want to tell you what happened, all of it. You deserve to know. They sat on the couch and Nikolai explained. His second in command, a vampire named Lysander, who'd been his designated successor, had orchestrated the whole thing. The power outage, the elevator trap, the fire. He'd planned for Nikolai to be caught in his penthouse when the sun rose, with no escape. The elevator failure had been a backup in case Nikolai tried to leave early. He wanted the throne that badly? Juliet asked. He wanted it immediately. I was planning to step down in 6 months, transition him in properly, but he didn't want to wait, and he didn't want to risk me changing my mind. Nikolai's voice was cold. So, he tried to kill me. What happened to him? He's been stripped of his position and exiled. My court wanted him executed, but I'm trying to move us away from that kind of justice. So he's banished, forbidden from entering any territory I control for the next century. If he's spotted, the exile extends another 100 years. He smiled without humor. Immortality makes long punishments very effective. And the throne? I'm stepping down next month, putting a council in place instead of a single king. Let them share the responsibility. He took her hand. I'm tired of ruling, Juliet. I've been tired for a long time. I want to live, not just exist. What will you do instead? I'm not sure yet. Travel, maybe. Read. Catch up on a few centuries of art I've missed. He traced patterns on her palm. Spend time with someone who makes me laugh in burning buildings. Juliet felt her cheeks warm. That's a low bar. It's really not. He lifted her hand, kissing her knuckles. I fell in love with you in that elevator, somewhere between the panic attack and the terrible jokes. I know it's fast, I know it's insane, but I'm 900 years old and I've never felt this before, so I'm not going to pretend I don't. Juliet's breath caught. Nikolai, you don't have to say it back. You don't have to feel the same way. I just needed you to know. I do, though. The words tumbled out. Feel the same way. I thought I was just traumatized and latching onto the nearest person, but then I didn't see you for 3 days and it felt like missing a limb, which is crazy because we've known each other for less than a week. Not crazy. He cupped her face. Or if it is, we're both crazy. She kissed him, and he kissed back, pulling her into his lap. His hands were gentle despite the bandages, his mouth warm and sure. Juliet melted into it, into him, and felt something settle in her chest. This was what she'd been looking for without knowing it. When they broke apart, she was breathless. So what now? Now I take you to dinner, somewhere nice with candles and wine and absolutely no elevators. Sounds perfect. Tomorrow I introduce you to my court. Let them see the woman I'm resigning a kingdom for. Juliet blinked. You're resigning for me? I'm resigning for me. But you're a significant part of that decision. I want a life, Juliet. A real one. And I can't have that while managing vampire politics. He brushed hair from her face. I want to wake up at sunset and ask you about your day. I want to take you to museums and argue about art. I want to watch you read detective novels and guess the ending wrong. I don't guess wrong. You absolutely do. I can tell by your face when you're surprised. She laughed, swatting his shoulder. Fine. Maybe sometimes. They stayed like that, wrapped together on the couch, talking until the sky started to darken. Nikolai told her about his life, the centuries condensed into stories. She told him about hers, shorter but no less important. They traded histories like gifts, building a foundation. Eventually, Juliet's stomach growled. Right, Nikolai said, standing. Dinner, I promised. He pulled her up. How do you feel about Italian? I feel great about Italian. They took a car service to a restaurant Nikolai knew, tucked into a quiet street with ivy on the walls and candles in the windows. The host greeted Nikolai by name, showed them to a private table in the back. Over pasta and wine, Juliet asked the question that had been nagging at her. Can you eat this, or is it just for show? I can eat, don't need to, but I can. Taste is muted, but still pleasant. He twirled linguine on his fork. I miss food sometimes, really miss it. That was the hardest part of turning initially, losing the joy of a good meal. What do you miss most? Strawberries, fresh ones in summer. We used to grow them in the castle garden. His expression went distant. I can still remember the taste. Where was the castle? Carpathians, Eastern Europe, in what's now Romania. Very traditional. He said it with a trace of amusement. All the stereotypes, basically. Castles, crypts, dramatic capes. Did you really wear a cape? Everyone wore capes. It was the 14th century. Juliet grinned. I'm picturing you in a cape now. I looked excellent in a cape, for your information. I believe you. They lingered over dessert tiramisu for her, espresso for him, and talked about lighter things. Books, movies, places they wanted to see. It felt normal, almost, like a regular date, if you ignored the vampire part. When they finally left, the city was fully dark, and Nikolai looked more relaxed than she'd seen him. He walked her to her building, hands in his pockets, comfortable in the night. At her door, he stopped. Can I see you tomorrow? You can see me every day if you want. I want. He kissed her, soft and sweet. Sleep well, Juliet. You too. Or rest well. Do vampires sleep? We do, actually, just not as much. He stepped back. I'll text you in the morning. We can plan the court introduction. I'm already nervous. Don't be, they'll love you. He paused. And if they don't, I don't particularly care. I'm leaving anyway. She watched him walk away, waiting until he'd turned the corner before going inside. Her roommate, Maya, was on the couch watching TV. So, Maya said without looking away from the screen, you've been gone a lot lately. I met someone. I figured. You're smiling like an idiot. Maya finally turned. What's he like? Smart? Funny? Protective? A little dramatic? Sounds perfect. When do I meet him? Juliet thought about trying to explain that her new boyfriend was a 900-year-old vampire king who'd almost burned to death saving her from an elevator fire. Soon, maybe next week. I'll hold you to that. Juliet escaped to her room and collapsed on the bed, pulling out her phone. Nikolai had already texted, made it home, missing you already, sleep well. She typed back, missing you too, see you tomorrow. Tomorrow came with a package. It arrived at her building's front desk with her name on it and no return address. Inside was a dress deep midnight blue, elegant and simple, with a note in precise handwriting. For tonight. If you hate it, ignore me and wear whatever makes you happy. And Juliet held it up. It was beautiful, probably custom, and fit perfectly when she tried it on. Of course it did. Vampire king with 9 centuries of practice. She wore it that evening when Nikolai picked her up. His eyes went wide when he saw her. You wore it. I like it. Good guess on the size. Not a guess. I pay attention. He offered his arm. Ready? As I'll ever be. They drove to a building Juliet had passed 100 times, but never noticed old stone, tucked between modern towers, easy to overlook. Nikolai led her through an unmarked door and down a staircase that seemed to go on forever. At the bottom was another door, Heavy wood reinforced with iron. Nikolai opened it, and they stepped into a different world. The court was underground, a sprawling network of rooms carved from stone and lit with chandeliers. Vampires filled the space, dozens of them, all pale and elegant, and too beautiful to be real. They turned as Nikolai entered, and the room went silent. "Everyone," Nikolai said calmly, "this is Juliet. She's with me. Treat her accordingly." A woman approached, tall and regal with white hair braided like a crown. "So this is the human who saved your life." "This is Juliet," Nikolai corrected. "And yes," the woman smiled. "I'm Seraphine. I've known Nikolai for 300 years, which means I've earned the right to embarrass him." She turned to Juliet. "Welcome. We're delighted to meet you." "Thank you." Juliet shook her hand, surprised by the warmth. More introductions followed, faces and names, all polite but curious. They asked her questions about her work, her interests, how she and Nikolai met. She told the story, editing out the assassination attempt, and they listened with rapt attention. "You ran into a burning building for him," one vampire said, awed. "He ran first," Juliet pointed out. "That's different. He heals." "He's still hurt." Nikolai squeezed her hand, pride radiating from him. Midway through the evening, Seraphine pulled Juliet aside. "Can we talk? Privately?" They stepped into a smaller room, away from the crowd. Seraphine studied her with sharp eyes. "You're serious about him." "I am." "He's serious about you too, more than I've ever seen him." She paused. "You know what he is, what we are. Has he explained all of it?" "Most of it, I think." "Has he told you that he could turn you, make you immortal?" Juliet's breath caught. "No, we haven't talked about that." Seraphine nodded slowly. "It's possible. Difficult, but possible, if you wanted it." "Do people usually want it?" "Some do, others don't. It's a personal choice." She leaned against the wall. "I'm telling you because Nikolai won't bring it up unless you do. He'll let you live a human life and die a human death rather than pressure you. But you should know it's an option." "Why are you telling me?" "Because I've watched him exist for 3 centuries. Not live exist. And now he's actually happy. I want him to stay that way." She met Juliet's eyes. "Whatever you choose it for the right reasons, not from fear, not from pressure. Understand?" "I do. Thank you." They returned to the main room, where Nikolai was deep in conversation with a group of younger vampires. He looked up when Juliet approached, excusing himself immediately. "Everything okay?" "Fine." Seraphine was just being protective. "She's good at that." He pulled her close. "How are you holding up? I know this is a lot." "I'm okay. They're nice. Less scary than I expected. Wait until you see us in a political debate. Then we're terrifying." The evening wound down around midnight. Nikolai took her home, walking her to her door again. "Thank you for tonight," he said. "For meeting everyone. For not running screaming." "Why would I run screaming?" "Most humans would." "I'm not most humans." "I've noticed." He kissed her, long and deep. "I'll see you tomorrow. You'll see me tomorrow." Over the next few weeks they fell into a rhythm. Nikolai would wake at sunset, and Juliet would be there, having shifted her schedule to match his. They'd have breakfast she'd have breakfast while he drank coffee and watched her with fond amusement. Then they'd go out. Museums, galleries, late-night bookstores, places that stayed open after dark. Juliet met more of his world. Vampires who ran businesses, who made art, who'd been alive for centuries and had stories to prove it. She met his lawyer, his accountant, his inner circle. All of them treated her with respect, but also with curiosity. The human who'd captured the king's heart. And Nikolai met hers. Maya, who took one look at him and whispered, "He's too hot to be real." Her supervisor at the hotel, who was just relieved she was okay after the fire. Her book club, who asked invasive questions about his age until Juliet lied and said 35. A month after the elevator, Nikolai officially stepped down. The ceremony was held in the underground court, formal and ancient. He passed his signet ring to the council, gave a short speech about change and progress, and walked away from 200 years of rule. Afterward, in his apartment, he looked lighter. "How do you feel?" Juliet asked. "Free." He pulled her into his lap. "Absolutely free. What do you want to do with all this freedom?" "Travel. With you, if you'll come." "Where?" "Everywhere. Europe, Asia, South America. I want to show you the world." He kissed her neck. "We can start small. Weekend trip to Paris. See how you like it." "I've never been to Paris." "Then we'll go next week." They did. Nikolai booked tickets, a hotel, everything. They spent 3 days wandering the city at night museums after hours. Private tours he arranged through vampire connections. They ate at cafes and walked along the Seine, and Juliet felt like she was living in a dream. On the last night they stood at the top of the Eiffel Tower. Nikolai had arranged for it to be closed to the public, just the two of them and the lights of Paris below. "I need to ask you something," he said quietly. Juliet's heart jumped. "Okay." "Seraphine told me she talked to you about turning." "She did. And I need to know if that's something you've thought about." Juliet had thought about it. Constantly, actually. Lying awake, imagining what it would mean. Immortality, power, centuries with Nikolai. Never aging, never dying. It was tempting. God, it was tempting. But "I have thought about it," she said carefully. "And I don't want it." She felt him tense. "Okay. Not because I don't want to be with you, I do, but I want to be human. I want this life exactly as it is, finite and messy and mine." She turned to face him. "I know that means we don't get forever. I know I'll age and you won't. But I'd rather have 50 years as myself than eternity as something else." Nikolai was quiet for a long moment. Then he cupped her face, eyes bright. "Okay. That's it? Just okay?" "What else would I say? It's your life, your choice." He kissed her forehead. "I'll take whatever time you give me and be grateful for every second." "You're not angry?" "I'm not angry. I'm in love with you, Juliet. The human you. If you wanted to turn, I'd support that. But I'm just as happy to love you exactly as you are." He pulled her close. "We'll figure it out. All of it." Relief flooded her. "I love you too. I don't think I've said that out loud yet." "You haven't. I've been waiting." "Well, I do. Love you. Completely." He kissed her then, deep and sure, and Juliet felt the last of her worry melt away. They'd figure it out. Together. They flew home the next day, and life continued. Nikolai stayed retired, filling his time with travel and art and Juliet. She kept her job at the hotel, liking the routine, the normalcy. They moved in together after 6 months, into a new apartment with UV-filtered windows and bookshelves for her ever-growing collection. A year after the elevator, Juliet came home to find the apartment filled with candles. Nikolai stood in the center, holding a small box. "What's this?" she asked. "A question." He opened the box, revealing a ring simple gold band with a small diamond. "Marry me. Human wedding, vampire witnesses, all of it. Let me be your husband for however long we get." Juliet's eyes filled. "Yes, absolutely yes." He slid the ring onto her finger and kissed her, and Juliet thought about elevator shafts and burning buildings and the ridiculous luck of falling in love in the dark. They were married 3 months later in a small ceremony that mixed both worlds. The vampire court attended, filling the back rows with pale faces and elegant clothes. Juliet's family and friends sat in front, oblivious to the supernatural guests behind them. Nikolai wore black, traditional, looking every inch the king he'd been. Juliet wore white, simple, and perfect. Seraphine officiated, reading from a text so old the language was barely recognizable. Then the human officiant took over, and they exchanged vows that were entirely their own. "I promise to love you," Juliet said, "in elevators and out of them, in fire and in safety, for as long as I have. I promise to love you, Nikolai replied, in darkness and in light, in immortality and in the fleeting time we're given, for as long as you'll have me. They kissed, and the room erupted in applause, human and vampire alike. The reception was held in the underground court, transformed into something beautiful. Flowers and lights, music and dancing. Juliet's family mingled with vampires and didn't even realize it, charmed by the elegant strangers with strange accents. Maya cornered Juliet by the bar. Your husband's friends are weird. They're European, Juliet said, which wasn't technically a lie. They're hot, though. Can you introduce me? Absolutely not. They danced until dawn, when the vampires made polite excuses and disappeared. Juliet and Nikolai left for their honeymoon Greece, 2 weeks island hopping and exploring ruins. Nikolai knew half the historical sites personally, had been there when they were new, and his commentary made every museum placard obsolete. This statue is wrong, he said in Athens, studying a recreation. Athena's spear was longer and the paint was brighter, much brighter. You saw the original? I met the sculptor. Nice man, terrible gambler. Juliet laughed, delighted. Tell me everything. He did. Stories spanning centuries, all told with humor and detail. Juliet collected them like treasures, filing them away. They returned home tanned well. She was tanned and happy. Life settled into something wonderful. Juliet eventually left the hotel, taking a job at a rare bookshop that kept night hours. Nikolai started consulting for museums, using his knowledge to authenticate pieces. They built a life together, strange and perfect. 5 years after the wedding, Juliet woke up thinking about the elevator. She did that sometimes, on the anniversary. Remembered the cold and the dark, and Nikolai's laugh cutting through the fear. She rolled over. Nikolai was awake, watching her with those strange, pale eyes. Good morning, he said softly. Good morning. She curled into him. 5 years. 5 years since the worst elevator ride in history. Best elevator ride, she corrected. I met you. You almost froze to death. Details. He laughed, pulling her closer. What do you want to do today? I don't know. Something normal. Coffee, bookshop, dinner. Sounds perfect. They got up, moving through their morning routine. Juliet made breakfast while Nikolai read the news, commenting on articles about events he'd witnessed firsthand. They argued about politics and art and whether the coffee was too strong. It was normal. Beautifully, perfectly normal. That evening, they went to the bookshop where Juliet worked. She'd called in, taking the night off, but wanted to show Nikolai a new acquisition. A first-edition detective novel, Golden Age, exactly her taste. It's perfect, she said, running her fingers over the cover. Buy it. It's $300. Buy it anyway. Consider it an anniversary present. She bought it. They had dinner at the Italian place from their first date, same table in the back. Over wine, Nikolai reached across and took her hand. I've been thinking, he said. About the future. Our future. He traced patterns on her palm. You're 32. We have decades left if we're lucky. But eventually, I'll get old and you won't. Yes. He met her eyes. And I want to make sure we handle that right. No regrets, no what-ifs. Juliet squeezed his hand. I don't regret my choice. I still don't want to turn. I know, and I respect that. But I want to ask anyway, one more time. Are you sure? She thought about it. Really thought. 5 years married, 5 years happy. She'd seen his world, knew what it offered. Immortality, power, time beyond measure. And she still didn't want it. I'm sure, she said firmly. I want this life, this human life, with you for as long as I get. Nikolai's eyes were bright. Okay, then that's what we'll do. He lifted her hand, kissing her knuckles. I'll love you until your last breath, and then I'll carry you with me. Every day after. You'll never be gone, Juliet. Not really. She felt tears prick her eyes. That's the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me. It's the truth. They finished dinner and walked home through the city, hand in hand. The night was clear, stars barely visible through the light pollution. Juliet looked up at them anyway. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked. "The old world, before electricity and cars and everything modern." "Sometimes. It was slower, quieter, but it was also harder." He glanced at her. "I like this world better. It gave me you." "Sap." "Absolutely." They reached their building, rode the elevator up a different elevator, a working one. But Juliet still felt a flutter of old fear. Nikolai held her hand through the ride, steady and sure. In their apartment, surrounded by books and art and the life they'd built, Juliet pulled him close. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For respecting my choice, for not making this a tragedy." "It's not a tragedy, it's a love story." He kissed her softly. "The best one I've ever had." Years continued to pass, measured in anniversaries and quiet moments. Juliet's hair started to show gray at 38. Nikolai stayed exactly the same, unchanged and unchanging. They handled it with grace and humor, joking about her silver streaks, about the wrinkles starting at her eyes. "You're going to look like my daughter eventually," she said one morning, studying her reflection. "I'll look like your unusually youthful husband," Nikolai corrected from the bed. "And people will assume I have an excellent skincare routine. Or that you made a deal with the devil." Close enough. At 40, Juliet published her first book, a detective novel, Golden Age style, set in a world where vampires and humans coexisted. It was fiction, mostly, but she borrowed from her life. The romance, the danger, the elevator scene. Critics loved it. Readers loved it more. Nikolai read it in one sitting and declared it perfect. "You made me taller," he observed. "Artistic license." "And more charming." "Also artistic license." He pulled her into his lap. "Write another one." She did, a whole series. Each book a mystery wrapped around the relationship between a human detective and her vampire husband. They became bestsellers. Juliet did interviews, carefully editing her inspiration, saying she'd always been fascinated by vampire lore. Nikolai attended every book launch, standing in the back and beaming with pride. At 50, Juliet started slowing down. Not drastically, but noticeably. She got tired more easily, needed reading glasses, complained about her knees. Nikolai adapted without comment. Slower walks, more breaks, audiobooks when her eyes hurt. He never made her feel old, never looked at her with pity or regret, just love, constant and unwavering. "Do you ever wish I'd chosen differently?" she asked one night. "No, this is exactly what I want. You, exactly as you are." He kissed her temple. "Every line, every gray hair, every year. I'm grateful for all of it." At 60, Juliet retired from the bookshop. They traveled more, taking long trips to places Nikolai had loved. He showed her his old castle in Romania, now a museum, and told her stories about growing up there. Showed her the garden where strawberries had grown. They planted new strawberries together in the garden of a cottage they bought nearby. A small place, just for summers, filled with light and warmth. Juliet tasted the first berry of the season and offered it to Nikolai. "See if you remember." He bit carefully, thoughtful, then smiled. "Close, very close." "Good enough?" "Better than good enough." At 70, Juliet's health started to decline. Nothing dramatic, just the slow accumulation of age. Doctors used words like manageable and expected and comfortable. Nikolai listened to all of it, asked careful questions, and took her home. "I'm not afraid," she told him. "I know." "Are you?" "Terrified." He said it simply, "But I'll manage. You've had 900 years of practice managing. I've had 50 years of practice loving you. That's harder to lose." She took his hand. "You're not losing me. I'll still be here. In the books, in the apartment, in every story you tell." She touched his chest over his heart. "In here. I know, doesn't make it easier. It's not supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be worth it." She smiled. "And it has been, every second." At 75, Juliet got sick. Pneumonia, the doctor said. treatable but risky at her age. She spent 2 weeks in the hospital, Nikolai at her bedside every night. He read to her, held her hand, told her stories to pass the time. She recovered, but she was weaker after. They moved into a ground-floor apartment, easier to navigate. Nikolai hired help daytime nurses who didn't question his absence. Nighttime care he provided himself. "This is not how I pictured our life," Juliet said one evening. "No? I thought I'd go out dramatically. Chase scene, explosion, something cinematic." Nikolai laughed. "You've been writing too many mysteries." "Probably." She leaned against him. "But this is good too. Quiet." "I like quiet." "I know you do." At 78, Juliet started talking about the end, not morbidly, just practically. What she wanted, where, how. Nikolai listened and made notes and promised to honor every wish. "I want to be cremated," she said. "Ashes scattered in the strawberry garden. And I want you to throw a party, not a funeral. Celebrate." "I'll try. You'll succeed. You're good at parties." "I've had practice." She smiled. "Will you be okay? After?" "Eventually. It'll take time, but I'll manage." He touched her face. "You've made my life better, Juliet. Immeasurably better. I'll carry that forward." Good. At 79, on a quiet evening in early spring, Juliet fell asleep in Nikolai's arms and didn't wake up. He held her for a long time, feeling her warmth fade, memorizing the weight of her against his chest. Then he called the nurse, made the arrangements, did everything she'd asked. The celebration was held in the underground court, transformed with flowers and light. Hundreds of people came, humans and vampires, friends and readers, everyone she'd touched. They told stories, shared memories, laughed and cried. Nikolai gave a speech. Short, heartfelt. He talked about an elevator and a freezing night, and the woman who'd saved him in every way that mattered. He talked about love and choice and the gift of a finite life fully lived. Then he scattered her ashes in the strawberry garden, under a sky just starting to lighten. Seraphine found him there an hour later, sitting among the plants. "How are you?" she asked quietly. "Surviving." He looked up at the sky. She was right. It was worth it. Every second. "What will you do now?" "Live, the way she wanted. Keep traveling, keep working. Maybe write something, though I'll never be as good as her." He stood, brushing dirt from his hands. "And I'll remember. Every day. She made me promise not to make it a tragedy, so I won't." She was extraordinary. She was. Nikolai smiled, soft and genuine. "I was lucky." Years passed. Nikolai kept his promise. He lived fully, traveled widely, worked on projects that mattered. He donated to libraries in Juliet's name, funded literacy programs, supported writers. He never remarried, never turned anyone. He'd had his great love, and it was enough. In the apartment he'd kept it, couldn't bear to leave, he built a shrine. Not morbid, just beautiful. Photos of them together, spanning 50 years. Her books, first editions, lined up on a shelf. The dress she'd worn to their wedding. The thermos from the elevator, dented but functional. And in the corner, in a UV-filtered window, a strawberry plant. It bloomed every spring, faithful and bright. 40 years after Juliet's death, Nikolai stood in that apartment and looked at the photos. He was unchanged, still pale and sharp and young. But he felt different. Fuller somehow. Like the decades with Juliet had added weight to his existence. Seraphine visited sometimes, checking on him. "You could turn someone," she said once. "Find another companion. I had my companion. I don't need another. You're lonely. I'm alone. There's a difference." He touched Juliet's photo. "And I'm not really alone. She's still here." Nikolai. "I'm fine, Seraphine, truly. This is exactly the life I chose. I have no regrets." She studied him, then nodded. "All right. But if you change your mind, I won't." More years passed. 50, 60, 70. The world changed around him, technology advancing, cities growing. Nikolai adapted, as he always had. But he kept pieces of the past close. The apartment, the photos, the strawberry plant. On the 100th anniversary of Juliet's death, he stood in the sky lobby of the Meridian Tower. It had been renovated, modernized, but the bones were the same. The elevator shaft where they'd been trapped was still there, though updated and safe now. Nikolai looked up at it and smiled. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for the worst morning that led to the best life." He felt her with him then. Not a ghost, just a presence. The memory of her laugh, her warmth, her stubborn refusal to leave him in danger. And he knew with absolute certainty that he'd made the right choice. Loving her, accepting her mortality, letting her go. It had hurt God. It had hurt, but it had been worth it. 50 years of happiness with Juliet was worth 1,000 years without her. He left the tower and went home, to the apartment filled with memories. The strawberry plant was blooming again, white flowers bright in the filtered sunlight. Nikolai touched one carefully, gently. "I love you," he said to the empty room. Still, always. And somewhere, in whatever came after, he liked to think Juliet smiled. Because she'd known. From the moment he wrapped his jacket around her in a freezing elevator, she'd known. This was the love story worth living, worth dying for, worth carrying forward, and it was.